What's up, guys, and welcome to Albino Rhino Music Presents. If you like Nirvana, then check out these.
I like running my bike at night because I get burned in the broad daylight. I'm just a fly down Puddle trying to get home.
So I'm going to kind of break this down into a couple different categories, and I'm going to start with bands that are almost like a carbon copy clone of Nirvana. Like, they sound like Nirvana in so many ways, from the aesthetic to the instrumentation to the vocals sounding like Kurt, really embracing that. So these first few bands I recommend are going to be that. And now I'm also kind of trying to give you modern recommendations. So bands that are still making music, have been making it at least in the last decade, things like that. So it's not like when you go to Spotify and Apple and you click on Nirvana and you scroll to the bottom to see what else they recommend that sounds like it. A lot of times it's just stuff other people stream, which ends up just being a bunch of 90s alt rock and grunge, which is fine. But we're looking a little for more modern stuff that maybe we haven't heard of. All right, so this first band we're going to talk about is a band called Puddle. Now, I would say this band is the Greta Van Fleet of Nirvana bands. So if you don't know who Greta Van Fleet is, it's a band that sounds like a reincarnate of Led Zeppelin. And so this is that for Nirvana. I mean, the way they play, the bass tone and the way it's played sounds like Chris, the vocally, I mean, this, out of all the bands I'm going to recommend, even ones that others embrace a Cobain vibe to their vocals, this one, I mean, his tone, his pitch, his cadence, the way he sings, it's totally embracing Kurt Cobain. They do the, kind of soft and then get real loud into loud eruptions. His more monotone singing sounds like Kurt. His yell sounds like it. It's incredible. And anyone that hates on that, that's that's not real art, you're just imitating something, whatever, man. If you and your buddies get in a room and y'all enjoy playing Nirvana songs and you're let's write our own songs but sound like this because it's fun. Who cares? Who cares if you're not completely original and creating some sort of new music? Whatever. I digress. They're a really cool band. Unfortunately, they only have one album, and it's on Apple Music. It's on compilations. It's called Grunge Punk Records. Has 10 songs, I think, on it. But 5 of them are re-recordings of the same song. So it's more like an EP. But the song Asphyxia, if you wanted that Nirvana vibe and sound and everything, Puddle Asphyxia, it's awesome. They have a new single that came out called Prom Queen. And that one totally embraces the Nirvana sound too. So yeah, Puddle, definitely check those guys out. All right, so this next band is a band called Caved. They had an album come out in 2023. The album was called Dark Humor. It's really cool. So they kind of do the same thing. They have the softer erupting into loudness, the crunchy, grungy guitars. Very much embracing that 90s grunge and alt rock sound, but definitely the grunge. The singer, especially when he gets more gets more yelling and stuff. I mean, he doesn't have the raw emotion of Kurt necessarily, but he definitely starts to sound more like it. Drummer's awesome. Tons of just crazy drum fills and stuff in the album. So it's a pretty cool album. I do like Puddle a little bit more. It's raw. So it definitely feels more raw. There's a more raw recording to it, which gives it some a little bit of Nirvana charm in the sense of a rawness to it, I guess, too. But you can hear hiccups and stuff, I guess sometimes it feels or something in it, but it's kind of cool. It gives it its own little charm. So definitely, Caved is definitely a cool band. All right, so the next band we're going to talk about is a band called Sap. Their album came out in 2023. They had an album in 2023 came out called Lard Baby. That's awesome. The first song on it, called Kiss My Kitty Cat, yeah. It totally, like, this guy sounds a little bit more like Kurt again, kind of like the first band Puddle. Not that, like, again, not that the guy from Caved doesn't sound like it, but, you know, not as much. This guy definitely sounds like it, especially in the aggression singing, not necessarily screaming, but the more raw aggression singing, and in utero. Definitely has got some in utero vibes. That Kiss My Kitty Cat, that first song, the guitar riff in it, it almost sounds like it could be something that could be on In Utero. Again, I wouldn't say like it's a copy, like a song I've already heard. It just is so familiar in such a good way, where it feels like home, but you're like listening to something new. So anyway, this band Sap, they're really cool. Lard Baby, awesome album. Definitely more in utero vibe, a little more chaotic and aggressive. Not that Nevermind wasn't aggressive, right? But I mean, it just definitely has that more era Nirvana feel to it, and just kind of like embraces the whole like kind of grunge rock sound and not so much the drony grunge sound. All right, so the next band that we're going to talk about, still totally, like, in my opinion, again, all of this is my opinion, so music's subjective unless you're an idiot. But anyway, this still encompasses really that Nirvana sound, although this is like Nirvana unplugged. Minus like Dave Grohl doing the soft drums and stuff like that on the actual MTV Nirvana Unplugged. But think of Nirvana Unplugged, acoustic guitars, the way that sounded with Kurt singing. This band is that. It's just acoustic, so if you hate acoustic, you're definitely going to want to lean on some of the other ones that I've suggested. But if you do like acoustic and you want something more chill, but you want more like a grungy, alt-rock, aggressive sound to when you listen to it, this might be something you would enjoy. The band name is called Bunkbed Coffin. Their album What's the Point came out in 2021. They've actually had one that came out in 2023, but I didn't listen to a lot of that one really. I kind of got focused on this album What's the Point. Song Cuts is a really big standout. Now, I will say at times when he sings, you can probably hear like other grunge singers, like different ones, like multiple different ones. At times you could probably be like, oh, he kind of sounds like this guy from this band. And then there's really times where it's just like when he says things like, hey, it sounds like the way Kurt Cobain said like, hey, and Smells Like Teen Spirit, but like on an acoustic guitar song and stuff. So it's definitely embracing that whole alt grunge, but like unplugged acoustic sound. So this next band I'm going to recommend, we're kind of getting in that second category I was talking about, where these are bands that embrace some sort of quality sound, aesthetics, something that reminds me of Nirvana, at least reminds me. If you hate it, stick to those earlier bands or just bye. Anyway, but they do remind me of like Nirvana in some way, and I'll go over why in each of the different ones, but they're not necessarily like they sound like Kurt Cobain, and they don't sound like Nirvana replicas. And this first one I'm going to go over is kind of like a more easier transition into a different, like not an exact sound, is this band called the Jins. In fact, they just had an album come out in 2026, which is the one that like really kind of stuck out to me, and it's called It's All Over. It just came out this year. They've been a band since at least 2017. They had an album come out that year. Yeah, this It's All Over. I mean, that opening song's a banger. It's big, like big guitars, like crunchy. The bass is driving. Vocals definitely don't necessarily resemble Kurt, but they do resemble the whole grunge era. Like they sound like he sounds like so many different bands from that time. So many different grunge bands like encompassed in his voice. honestly, they do kind of like the way they just rock, and with the modern production, it's like what a modern grunge band that's big with well production I feel like would sound like. I mean, because they classify themselves as grunge. They definitely, like, you could throw them in alt rock, which grunge gets thrown in alt rock categories a lot too. I mean, it's just a bigger, broader spectrum. Punk bands can get thrown in alt rock, so they definitely have like a, you know, not like a modern Foo Fighters, but like early Foo Fighters mixed with like a grunge rock sound to them. A garage rock, I said grunge rock, but like more like a garage rock meets the Foo Fighters, so it's really got that kind of like that vibe going for it. It's really cool, really big, sounds really good on a pair of headphones. Cool. So this next band I'm going to recommend, again, not an exact replica of Nirvana, right? But there's something that I get a vibe from them. It's this band called Violent Soho. I think they've been making music since at least 2010. I mean, probably before that. That's when their first album came out. And they 2023 they had a re-release, a 10-year release of an album called Hungry Ghost, which is awesome. It's got some of their top songs on it, Covered in Chrome, Dope Calypso, such awesome songs. Definitely really good at that kind of soft and then erupting into like a sound, like loud sound, and just getting big and loud and heavy, kind of like, you know, what Nirvana does so well. Again, crunchy guitars. I mean, every band I'm gonna recommend, they have these crunchy big guitars at times and stuff like that. Great vocals, awesome vocals, but doesn't sound like Kurt necessarily. Almost has like more of a punk vibe going on with his voice. I wouldn't call this band a punk band. They're definitely more in the vein of like a grungy alt rock band, and you know, that almost has a punk flair, but it's more because the vocals have this nasally vocals to it, but really good vocals, and fitting, because that's like a huge part of what like inspired Kurt Cobain's music. Bands like the Melvins and stuff like that was like a big inspiration for him. Like that was huge and a part of his whole, like, not just what inspired his music, but his like persona and attitude came from that. So this band kind of fits that. I like this band a lot. Really cool. So definitely Violent Soho, album Hungry Ghost. Highly recommend. All right. I got two more. This next band, again, probably like more like, they definitely got the big crunchy guitars. They're going from more like a mellow to something loud and erupting is definitely more dramatic with this band. It's a band called Basement. They might even have more ties to like the whole punk thing than Violent Soho does, for sure. Although, again, I would not call this band punk by any means. They don't necessarily have, they're not, these two bands, Violent Soho and Basement, are not fast enough for me to consider them punk or anything like that, but they definitely like embrace that kind of like post-grunge alt rock when we're like bridging into this sound, in a good way, not in the bad ways of post-grunge, if there's some things you hate. Anyways, but vocalist, awesome, very cool, very big choruses. So yeah, definitely Basement. Check this band out too. So one last disclaimer before I recommend this last band, that these last few bands, I'm not saying they sound exactly like Nirvana. So if that's what you're going into expecting, then you're not listening. So go back and listen to the first few bands if you want. More of a carbon copy of Nirvana. So this last band I'm recommending, they're a little bit bigger. And they've been around for a while, since like the late 2000s, 2008, 6, something like that. If you've heard some of their newer stuff or some of their more popular songs, you might think, what in the hell is he talking about? That band's not like Nirvana. So I get it. But let me explain. So the band I'm talking about is, one, Bias. They're one of my favorite bands of all time. It's Manchester Orchestra. I freaking love this band. and they're super eclectic. So if you've heard some of their stuff and you're like, I don't know what you're talking about with Nirvana, then you might be on point with the song you're referencing. What specifically only 2 albums I would really go to of theirs, and they have a big discography at this point, that really give that Nirvana vibe off. And to me, I guess I hear it. It's Mean Everything to Nothing, and then the album Cope, which I have right back there. Those 2 albums in particular, crunchy, loud guitars. Cope is dirty, grungy, crunchy, punky vibe to it. Mean Everything to Nothing has this just grungy alt rock vibe to so much of it. And I think like in the mid to late 2000s, indie rock and alt rock had just been like infested with this folksy acoustic, which I like some of that. There's nothing wrong with that. I dig it. But the edge was gone. The edge to it was gone. And Manchester Orchestra brought this like edge to this indie rock, scene that it needed. When I've seen them live, they're so big and loud and heavy. Now when Mean Everything to Nothing came out, I'm pretty sure they were a 5-piece band, and they had like a percussionist that like played keys, so everything sounds so big. The way Nevermind, when you put that on and that first like guitar riff is playing, and then it's like and the drums come in and everything just gets so big. I am not comparing Mean Everything to Nevermind. To Nevermind. Please don't misconstrue what I'm saying. I'm just saying how big it is. The crunchiness, going from some melodic guitar part to something big and crunchy and having a guttural yell. Vocally, Andy Hull, the singer from Manchester, much higher pitched than Kurt, but that yell and scream, man, it doesn't sound like his, but it's guttural and emotional. Like Kurt's not emo, right? Grunge isn't emo, but man, that man had emotion in his vocals, right? Andy Hull like does that same thing in a rocking kind of way. And I also think, like, I guess for me, what I get from it is Kurt Cobain spoke to a whole generation of people. Now on a large scale, like stadium level scale, right? Where he spoke to Generation X, and it wasn't even the lyrics, because let's face it, his lyrics don't make a lot of sense. But it was the angst that the music gave, right? And angst doesn't have to be like, oh, girls, blah, blah, blah. Like, it doesn't have to be like pop punk angst from the early 2000s if that's where your mind goes. Angst is like uncertainty in life and uncertainty in belief and uncertainty in so many things. And in the music and even the lyrical content, while confusing, Kurt Cobain embraced that. And that's why Gen X and people grabbed onto it so much. And that's why it's been like, stands the test of time, right? That's why kids still like it. Andy Hull, like, obviously on a smaller scale, I think encompasses that ability. I believe there's like a whole generation of like millennial people that grew up in churches or super religious places with big, huge churches, and everything felt so business and all this stuff. And I know a lot of bands sing about religion and stuff, but there's something that Andy Hull does where he speaks to people, like a generation of people, I believe. And again, maybe not obviously on as big of a scale as like Nirvana, but I mean, still, man, like, I think people have latched on to Manchester Orchestra. I know I have. I'm probably a couple years older than him, so very similar in age. Probably have experienced life changes like he has, so lyrics maybe mean more to me. But I also think that it just, reaching groups of people in a big way with that crunchy, rocking, guttural sound at times. Songs on Mean Everything to Nothing, like Pride. The first one, I'm the Only One, Shake It Out, In My Teeth, The River, Cope. That whole album embraces this grungy, like guttural alt rock punky. It's like if like Nirvana met some like slower down punk band met like the Smashing Pumpkins, like for real. So anyway, give it a chance. If you hate it, it's totally cool. I'm fine with that, obviously. But if you like any of these, please let me know in the comments. Any of these bands, if you're going for that Nirvana carbon copy clone, go for some of those earlier bands I talked about. If you're more open-minded and willing to hear some of the things I talked about and suggestions I talked about, then listen to, some of the other bands that I've mentioned later in the video. I also have added a link to a Spotify and an Apple Music playlist of all of these bands. I got a song from each band except Puddle. I got 2 songs from them because they just embrace Nirvana so much. So I put a song from every band on this playlist. So if you don't want to go look all of them up, just click the link to that playlist if you have one of those and listen to them and see what you think. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you have any suggestions for me. Just say something down in the comments. And check out our Nirvana tier list I did with some buddies, and we played a game show where we guessed some Nirvana songs based off some AI slop images. So anyway, thanks for checking out Albino Run on Music. We'll see you next time.
I like riding my bike at night because